Hello and welcome. I am Steve Clemons, editor-at-large of The Hill. Thank you for joining us for a timely and important conversation around science and American advancement. I'd like to thank our sponsor, Philip Morris International, for their support of today's event. I think all of you will agree with me when I say science and advancement do go hand in hand. However, more often than not, science doesn't work in straight lines, and that can frustrate strict timelines and investment efforts. As the world tackles the challenge of overcoming the coronavirus, scientific research has once again entered center stage. This attention has brought opportunities for innovation, but our age of content overload and the expectation of quick fixes has also brought new mountains to climb for those seeking investment in science and technology. Today's conversation is going to examine why continued scientific investment is important to the nation. We're going to explore the role of science in overcoming many of today's and tomorrow's challenges, and we're going to explore how science somehow is very unpredictable, and that's part of the process. We'll ask how we can encourage diversity and inclusion in the field to encourage the best and brightest scientific workforce. We have a fantastic lineup for you. Incredible scientists and technologists, key policymakers and leaders in government. But before we get underway, a few housekeeping notes. You can tweet us at The Hill Events using the hashtag #TheHillScience. We're broadcasting live and we'll be taking your questions throughout the program. As with any live stream, you could experience occasional trouble with the video. I have to say, I always laugh at this part. They say that refreshing the page should in most cases fix the problem. I hope it does for you. To kick off the program, I'm joined by a scientist, an astrophysicist, whose accomplishments are too numerous to list here. She is a former chief scientist of NASA and former director of the National Science Foundation. Welcome, Franz Córdova. It's so great to see you. I know you're off in Santa Fe, heaven to me, but I'm really happy that you were able to join us today. Let me just start out, Franz. I'm sharing my bias here. I think investment in science matters for the country, and you've been in this world for a long time as the former director of the National Science Foundation. Can you share with our audience, give them a glimpse of what our future could be if we get a lot of things right?
Well, just look at what our future, what our present is right now, that because of the investment, substantial investment by the U.S. in research and development, we have amazing tools at our disposal, and it's really changed our lives, even over the past couple of decades or so. Our understanding of everything, including what's going on in the universe at large, has changed immensely, and we now have all the electronic tools at our disposal to enhance communication and transportation. And of course, medicine has changed immensely, and that's so important today. So looking to the future, if we just continue on this trajectory of investment in science and technology, I think the future holds amazing new surprises, just as the past has done for us. And the tools that are being developed right now, even during this pandemic, by scientists in the U.S. and worldwide, really do have the potential to change our future and make it even more amazing than our present is.
Now, Franz, I'm going to share a little bit of your background with our audience. You had a Mexican-American dad, a West Point graduate. You had an Irish-American mom. You're a former chief scientist of NASA, former chancellor UC Riverside, president, I think the 13th president or so of Purdue University, the 12th president of the National Science Foundation. I mean, incredible resume. And I'm proud today that we have many women scientists and technologists. After you, Susan Hockfield of MIT, Ellen Stofan of the Air and Space Museum, and others. How do we, and I hate to talk to you as a product, but I'm going to, how do we scale however we got the three of you?
That was the first question that I asked when I got to the National Science Foundation, was the question of scale. There are amazing efforts going on all over the country, just wonderful people working on the challenge of increasing the STEM workforce and making sure that more women and underrepresented minorities are included. And I wanted to use my background, because I grew up with no scientists, scientists in my household or relatives, and very little interaction with scientists growing up. But yet I became a scientist because I was driven by informal science education, by media, television shows, and books, and I thought, wow, that's a great investment to make. We'll make the investment in formal education. Of course, we have to always continue to that, but we'll try to spread informal education through all different sorts of media. Today, we have a much richer menu of media to do that with, and we'll try to reach every child in America and ensure that they know about what's out there and how the natural world is beautiful, and they can be involved in it. And they can too become scientists and engineers and develop the tools to make our future better. So I started a program called Includes, which now 7 other federal science agencies have joined their own science education efforts in order to do just what you said, Steve, to scale this up, to try to embrace all of America's youth in STEM education.
You know, I'm really grateful that you're doing that, because I think it's so very, very important. Now you're fully out of NSF, right? You're not. You can.
Correct.
So I assume you can. You can critique the government. You can critique the process. I guess one of the questions I have is, I've talked to folks like you in the past, and my friend Tom Khalil, who has been in science policy for a long time. And folks tell me that the next wave, the next generation of real scientific leaps for the country are those areas that blur the lines between disciplines. That Susan Hockfield, where biology is converging with engineering, and space is converging with mathematics. When you kind of look at that, and so I'm just interested, as I was preparing for this show today, the number of silos that are out there. And I know you've tried to break them up, but I'd love to get your critique of what you think would move us forward as a nation better in funding and supporting and understanding science, and the convergence that's happened, but we don't seem to be organized for convergence.
Well, we're working towards that, and there are more and better efforts all the time. At NSF, we promulgated what we call the 10 big ideas for the future and for future investment, and one of those was convergence. And we took note of Susan Hockfield's efforts and MIT's efforts in the biomedical side. There are many areas that would benefit by convergence. Let me just bring up one recent example. It's so recent, it just happened last week. The National Academy, at the behest and the investment of the National Science Foundation, just started a study on Earth systems science. And this is a truly convergent effort that brings together life scientists and geosciences and computer scientists and social and behavioral scientists, all to understand how complex the Earth is as an entire system, and how to develop the workforce to understand it better, and develop the tools and the infrastructure, including, as you said, all those bodies that are now separate, all doing their own efforts to do a piece of the Earth, the oceans, or deep under the oceans, the land masses, the atmosphere, and so forth, to integrate all that and bring it together. And so the academies will hopefully devise a plan of how to do better integration and how to really bring convergence to the fore in the in Earth sciences. And there are so many other areas that would benefit from a convergence approach.
You were, as I understand it, recently in the Antarctic. Was this part of that effort, the Antarctic focus that you've had?
The National Science Foundation runs the U.S. Antarctic program for the entire country and has 3 bases there, including the main station at McMurdo. And there's a lot of people there at any given time doing all sorts of studies on the Earth, yes, but also in the skies and astrophysics. And NASA has a balloon launching base there that NSF manages for it. And it's an infrastructure that is very aged, and we're very pleased that Congress has agreed with our plan to refurbish the station there at McMurdo, just as we furbished the station at the South Pole a couple of decades ago, and make sure it's up to the task of ensuring that we can do the very best science from Antarctica.
Franz, I want to ask you a kind of a double-pronged question. I think it's really important. You have been an astrophysicist and made huge contributions there, but from that perch, as you look at the buckets of work that we as a nation should be investing in, what does it look like? And I want to ask you a second piece to it. The National Science Foundation's budget, I think, is between $7 and $8 billion in that ballpark. What if it were $24 billion? Would we get a lot more from that, or would that just, inflate everything? Can the American ecosystem of science handle what I think would be a rather trivial tripling of the budget? But just get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I definitely we would get more by investing more. Every year there are billions of dollars of great proposals that are submitted to agencies like the National Science Foundation that can't be funded for lack of money. And so we're losing all those good ideas and their products, what they could possibly produce. And worse, we're losing in many instances the young people, all the people that have made those proposals, because they get discouraged and perhaps will go to other fields. So that's something we just can't afford to do. And especially in this time when there's so many other countries that are competitive with us in very important areas that have to do with the science and engineering that NSF funds, areas like quantum physics and quantum information sciences and artificial intelligence and big data, and understanding the Arctic and its influence on the planet, and understanding the rules of life and how we can improve agriculture by understanding that better. There are just so many important areas to invest in. And there's so much that goes unfunded that absolutely, if the budget were to double or triple, and as you know, Steve, a number of senators and congressmen have recently proposed doing so. In fact, we can go back to the year 2007 in the American Competes Act that was passed by Congress, when there was a doubling of agencies' budget like the NSF inside of that Authorization Act. But it hasn't happened yet, and I believe the science agencies are more than ready to act very well should bills like that be passed.
Franz, there's never enough time for these conversations. I could talk to you for hours. I think it would be my fantasy. I do want to get one question in from our audience in this, because I think this is very important to build the public into these. But do we have Alan? Alan?
Hi. My name's Alan Ray. I'm director of the New York State Center of Excellence in Materials Informatics at University of Buffalo. And my question is, why are so many of us rejecting science as an opinion rather than a fact?
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Alan, and good to see you. And hello to your president, who is a great friend of mine, the president of the University of Buffalo, Satish Tripathi. The American public really does have a lot of trust in scientists. And a Pew Research Center survey about a year ago exactly said that in their survey, 86% of Americans trust scientists. And that was way up from even a few years before that. So I think that some of this is that we're focusing on a smaller number of people who have doubts or opinions, beliefs that go in a different direction from believing in facts. So we, as scientists, what our job is to continue to do the very best research that we can, and to continue to put the information out there, and in all sorts of ways, creative ways, as well as the scientific publications, and hope that people will latch on to that, and that they will change their minds. I know when I went to college, I learned a lot of things, and I changed my mind with new data and new information. Some people's minds will not be changed, and we have to focus on the ones that are receptive to new information and will act on it.
Well, Franz Córdova, I have it now right, the 14th director of the National Science Foundation. You've shown incredible leadership in the country. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Steve.